Welcome back, library adventurers. My name is Kirsty, and I'm a professional adventurer for Kirklees Libraries. I hope you've been able to enjoy some of this lovely weather we've had lately, although I'm sitting here and it's absolutely pouring down out with rain today. But if you have been enjoying this really hot weather, then I think you're going to love today's Library Adventures Live. We've got wonderfully exotic animals for you today, trees that seem to reach up to the top of the very sky, and rivers full of menacing creatures, and a story full of excitement, friendship, and secrets. We're in for a true library adventure today. Now, you're going to need some paper and a pen, so if you've got a bit of time now, go and find that so we're all ready to start, okay? But before we head off further into the jungle, wait, what's that angling towards you from that tree behind you? Oh, no, you're fine, you're fine. It's just a vine. It's just a vine that looks a bit like a snake. We won't worry. Let's move a little more quickly into the jungle. Now then, how are your Library Adventure Live challenges coming along? You can keep sending in your creations, funny poems, houses of the future, and a footballer that you think will make a really good story. Keep sending them in. We really want to see them. Okay? Did you hear that splash? And what's that log in that river over there that's moving towards us? Can logs move towards you like that? Could it be something? No, we'll be fine, I'm sure. Or maybe we need some help. Maybe we need some help from today's author, Emma Rea. Emma is the author of Top Dog and My Name is River. And today she is going to be introducing us to her story, My Name is River, an adventure story that starts in Wales. The country, the country, not the mammal. It's not starting inside a whale. I can see what you're thinking there. And will take us into the extraordinary Amazonian rainforest. We need to know more. So let's not waste any more time looking around this jungle around us. Let's meet Emma Rea. We're going to bring her in right this moment. Okay, here she comes, straight off for a nice adventure. Morning, Emma.
Good morning,
welcome
Kirsty.
to Kirklees Libraries Library Adventures Live. We're looking forward to a really good adventurous time today. Are you ready to take us on a great adventure?
I am, and I'm very, very happy to be here with you in Kirklees Library today for two reasons. Firstly, I hear that Kirklees Library is the burial place of Robin Hood. And what an incredible local hero you guys have. Robin Hood with all his characters roaming in the wild, caring about all the very poor people in his area and doing his best to help them. And the other reason I'm so happy to be with you today is because I was born in Yorkshire. And as we all know, Yorkshire is the best place in the world. I'm wearing my jungle-themed T-shirt with, I want to show you this, and they really are that cute. That's just the way it is. And I'm here to tell you about my books. And as Kirsty said, the first one is Top Dog, about Dylan, and the second one is Dylan's further adventures, My Name is River, in which he goes to Brazil and up the Amazon River. And what I have to help me when I'm writing, because we all need a little bit of inspiration, is a pencil sharpener. So you can see the pencil sharpener underneath, but it's in the shape of an aeroplane. And my son gave me this before I was published to help my writing to take off. We all need little things like that, I think, to sort of, keep us going. Right, now in My Name is River, what my hero Dylan wants to do is build a tree house in a tree that hangs over the river, whose branches stretch out over the river. And that's what he'd really like to do in his October half-term holiday on his father's farm. He's a farmer's son, and they've lived on this farm all their lives, his father, his grandfather, and he hopes to grow up on it. Well, he is going to grow up on it, that's his whole life. But he wants to build a tree house. But before I go any further with my story, I'd like to take you straight into the jungle.
Right, everybody. So we've got a wonderful presentation full of wonderful pictures and photographs to show you. So I'm just going to share the screen so you can see as Emma takes us deeper into the rainforest. If you have any questions, remember, you can use the chat function on YouTube and Facebook to type in questions for Emma, okay? And we can do those at the end, but here we go. Here's Emma's presentation. Thank you, Emma.
Okay, everyone. So what I'd really like you to do is imagine that you're sitting in a canoe. This is the Amazon rainforest here. And I want you to imagine you're in a canoe that's been dug out of a tree trunk. It's quite a shallow canoe. So when you're sitting in it, you can't wobble too much because the water will come in. And if an insect lands on your nose, you're just going to have to be very, very still, because in the water are caiman and piranhas, and you don't really want to go in there. Now, the next thing I'm going to make you listen to, while you're in this canoe, I want you to imagine that you're right there, and this next slide is the recording. I'm going to let you listen to it for a whole minute. So I'd like you to listen very carefully. There are some insect noises in the background, and I think there's a bird squawking at some point, but there's some roaring going on. It's a sort of roar, and I want you to really listen to that and try and guess what sort of animal is making that noise, and how many of them there might be. Okay, so this is a whole minute of being in the Amazon rainforest in your canoe. Oops, sorry. There. Okay, so I slightly gave the game away, didn't I? Because I showed you the next screen. But anyway, so you've all guessed it's monkeys that make this noise, this roaring noise. And they're called howler monkeys. And howler monkeys are the loudest land mammal in the world. And the reason they're so loud is because they have a bone behind their jawbone. We all have these bones. They're called hyoid bones, but their hyoid bones have got cavities. They've got tiny little holes in, so that when they make that roaring noise, it echoes and reverberates through the cavities. And you can hear it from 5 kilometers away. And it's very, very scary if it's up close. I don't know if that was loud enough on your devices to hear quite how loud they can be. And sometimes there might only be about 3 or 4 of them making that noise. And you might ask, why do they make this incredibly loud noise? And the truth is because they don't want to get into fights. So they've woken up, they've been scampering around the forest, they've found some really fantastic berries, and they're going, oh, fruit breakfast, fruit salad for breakfast, great. But they think if anybody else can smell these, and they come along, because they do have incredible powers of smell, they can smell from 2 kilometers away, which is a bit like you smelling school cabbage from your house. You get up in the morning, have your breakfast, you go, oh, I can smell a school cabbage already 2 kilometers or maybe more away. So they don't want to have a fight while they're having their fruit salad breakfast. So they make this roaring noise, which can be heard from 5 kilometers away, so that all the other monkeys, howler monkeys, will think, let's not get into a fight. No one ever comes out well at this. We'll just let them have their fruit salad breakfast and we'll go and find our own somewhere else. They do. And the other thing about these monkeys is that they have prehensile tails. Now, prehensile means gripping, basically, and we have prehensile thumbs, and it's our prehensile thumbs, which mean we can open bottle tops. I mean, a dog couldn't open a bottle top, could it? And our brains is really what makes us the dominant creature of the world. And so having something which is prehensile is really pretty useful for an animal. And you can see here this beautiful howler monkey is hanging on to a tree with his tail. And those tails also have pads like our palms. They can actually feel something with their tails. So these beautiful howler monkeys live for about 15 or 20 years, and they're about 3 feet long, except for not including their tails, and they live in family groups. And they don't like coming down to the ground. They like staying up in the trees. So to get water, they wipe their hand over a leaf, which is always wet because it's the rainforest, and then they lick it, and that's how they get their water. And these wonderful monkeys, you might wonder where they live. So they live in South America. And this is the map of the world. You can probably see Great Britain there, little orange island. And the pink one is South America. It's slightly distorted in this map. It's usually a bit wider than that. But it's the pink one is South America. And the howler monkeys live in many countries in South America. They live in Brazil, which is this largest one you can see, and Venezuela and Bolivia and Ecuador and Mexico and Guatemala and Paraguay. You can see all of those countries around Brazil there. The rainforest, which is where obviously they don't live in the cities, is this green patch here. And so that covers several of those countries. And it also contains, as I'm sure you know, the Amazon River. Now, the Amazon River is the longest in the world and the biggest in the world. Although, having said that, I have to admit that some grown-ups argue and say that the Nile in Egypt is the longest in the world. And this is a sort of argument that grown-ups sometimes have, which is a really nice kind of argument. It's just like, who's got the longest river? You know, it's sort of... but anyway, the Amazon has got more water flowing through it, so it's definitely the biggest, so we win there. And the reason it's got so much water flowing through it is because there's a mountain range to the west, and the mountains have snow and ice all the way through the winter. And then in the spring, it melts, and all the water comes pouring down the mountain into all the tiny little streams, and they all flow together into the Amazon River. And because so much water is coming in, the Amazon River floods hugely, and the level of the river changes from 20 meters in some parts and then 4 meters in others. And you can see, if you look at this tree here, you can see that there's a darker patch right at the very bottom, very, very dark margin right at the bottom of the tree, and then another slightly paler dark margin, but wider above it. And that's showing how the level has sunk as all the ice has come down and it's flowing away, and it's now towards the end of the summer. So the river's going down and down and down. Now, you might ask, why howler monkeys? Why are we talking about howler monkeys? Why are we talking about Brazil? Well, in My Name is River, my hero Dylan gets lost in the Amazon rainforest, and he hears howler monkeys, and he is absolutely terrified, because they are actually really pretty terrifying creatures when you listen to them. I mean, the fact that they only eat berries means they're not really terrifying at all. When he's at home, he hears, before he goes on his journey, he hears secretly, he overhears somebody saying that his farm, which his father and his grandfather and his great-grandfather have worked on all their lives, and which Dylan expected to work on all his life, has been sold to a global company, a huge corporation called Bluebird. And Dylan is devastated. He's not a guy who likes school very much. He just wants to be outside herding the sheep and basically being outside. So when he hears this, he goes to his favorite place. And Dylan's favorite place is this tree which has fallen across a riverbank. And he goes there after school every day with his mates, and they all sit there, unless it's really raining. I mean, if it's raining a little bit, they don't really care, you know. It doesn't matter getting a bit wet. But if it's really pouring, then they don't go. But most days they go and they sit on this tree, and they just kind of josh around and they mess around and they tease each other, and, you know, they have plans. And then Dylan sees the tree above and thinks, oh, I want to make a tree house up there. And because he's spent so much time sitting on this tree trunk, and he's been looking at the river all this time, he's been watching it and watching it. And together, you know, when it's a bit dry in the summer, they've tried to dam the river. And Dylan has noticed something about the river. And what he's noticed is that you cannot stop the river, it will always find a way forwards. It'll either go around something or underneath it, or it'll just splash right over it. And even when they've tried to build a dam, it'll either leak through it or just build up behind it and then it'll overflow. So he thinks, if the river can always find a way forwards, maybe I can find a way forwards, some sort of way forwards to stop this company from buying, well, they've already bought the farm, but maybe I can persuade them to buy the farm next door, which has been for sale for a year, and then we could buy our farm back, and then everyone would be happy. So, and this idea about using water as inspiration, there's actually a Chinese philosophy which believes that you can live your whole life by following the example of water, and that there is enormous strength in gentleness and in finding a way forwards that doesn't use violence. Now then, so Dylan's got to try and change this guy, change the mind of the man who runs the corporation Bluebird. And his only idea, his only little thread of way forwards is that he has a friend called Floyd. And Floyd's dad works for Bluebird. So, so Dylan thinks, well, I need to talk to him. There are two problems with this. There are usually two problems for everything. And one is that his friend Floyd is very icy cold. There's something, they're sort of in the same friend group, you know, they're mates sort of in the group, but they're not really close friends yet. And Dylan isn't really sure if they ever will be. He'd quite like to be, but he's not quite sure of him. So that's one problem. And the second problem is that Floyd's dad lives and works in Brazil. Quite a big problem. But Dylan decides to do every single thing he can think of to try and change this terrible thing that's happened to his family's farm. So what he's got, and you probably know this word, is determination. And it's quite good to find the right words for things because it sort of gives you focus. And if you nail your feelings in a word, you understand yourself better. So it's quite handy to have these words. And a great place to find words is a thesaurus, which I know sounds like a dinosaur, but it's not a dinosaur. It's a book which doesn't give you the meanings of words, it gives you other words which mean the same thing. So for instance, determinism, it will also show you words such as perseverance, persistence, tenacity, resolve. And it's great, you know, you can have fun with the thesaurus. If you look up laugh, for instance, it'll give you a whole load of words. You've got chuckle, chortle, guffaw, giggle, titter, snigger, roar with laughter. It gives you phrases. So you've got hoot with laughter, shake with laughter, be convulsed with laughter, split one's sides, roll in the aisles, be doubled up, die laughing, be creased up, fall about, crack up, laugh like a drain. So you can have fun with the thesaurus. Now, where were we? I've got completely off. I know, that's right. So Dylan and Floyd go to Brazil, and there they meet a girl called Lucia. And Lucia is a homeless girl, and she lives in a disused bus with a load of other homeless children. And there are children all over the world who live like this, and it is very dangerous and very scary for them. They live off scraps of food that they can find or things that they can steal. They can't go to school because they haven't got parents and they haven't got an address. And but she also has got determination like Dylan, and what she wants is to be the president of Brazil, which is quite ambitious, as you might think. And there are two things that she owns. One is an old thesaurus, which she found in a rubbish dump, and she's teaching herself English. So she does speak quite weird English because she always uses very formal, sort of smart words. And the other thing she has is a Great Dane puppy, and that is the only thing she loves in the whole world. And her Great Dane puppy is called Pinicati. It's got grey velvet fur, soft ears, very long legs for a puppy, and enormous paws. And if you ever get a puppy and you didn't want a big dog, then it's quite a bad sign if they have big paws, because if they've got big paws, they're going to be a very big dog. So check the paws out. Anyway, I'm now going to read you a bit from my book. And I'm going to read you a bit from the point where Dylan and Lucia have been, Dylan and Floyd have been separated from each other against their will. Dylan has been rescued from a very dangerous situation by Lucia. He's been told by the head of Bluebird that they will not sell the farm back. So he has reached absolute despair. It's all over, his whole trip. He's also lost in Manaus, in a city, not the right city to fly back home from, because something went wrong earlier in the book. So he's really quite stuck. And he thinks, maybe the best thing about living in my farm was the friends I was going to grow up with. And my friend Floyd is now stuck up the Amazon River in a field camp. So maybe I should try and help him. There's nothing else he can think of to do now. And from something that's happened earlier in the book, he knows that there's a boat going up the Amazon River that day. So he decides to try and find it and get on it and go and join his friend Floyd. So he and Lucia are running through the city, and Pinicati on her lovely long grey velvet legs through the marketplace. Okay, now I'm going to read to you. At last, they came out onto a huge concrete expanse. It was the docks, the bank of the Amazon River, but you could hardly see the river for all the boats. Dozens and dozens of boats, as far as the eye could see. Most of them were large, with 4 stories all open to the air and hung with hammocks close together. They were painted red and white or blue and white, and they were crammed with people. On the lowest decks, nearest the water, massive boxes with pictures of potatoes on the side, or huge bags of carrots were stored. More food was being loaded from the back of lorries at the dock's edge. Piles of bananas were everywhere. Dylan grabbed a loose banana from a wheelbarrow and ran off along the dock, peeling it. Other boats looked like day boats, smaller, with roofs to keep the sun off, but also open at all sides. Further along were boats that weren't designed for passengers, with large boxes or wrapped items loaded onto the deck. Dylan looked for clues to see which one might belong to Bluebird. None of them had the name painted in large letters along the side, that was for sure. He came to a large cargo boat with a cabin at the front and a great canvas covering the whole of the back, stretched high over something big. 2 men were pulling the last corner of the canvas down to the hooks on the side of the boat. Dylan rushed to see what was being covered and glimpsed the unmistakable caterpillar treads of a digger. And what was the thing he had seen first on the list on Miss Crassie's seat in the aeroplane? Digger, 1. And how many diggers were likely to be going up the Amazon River today? A muscly man pushing an empty wheelbarrow away from the boat noticed Dylan crouching down, and he frowned. He wore an oily t-shirt and combat trousers, and his chin was dark with bristles. Then he saw Pinicati, and his frown turned to a nasty grin. He was gazing at her as if she was the most interesting puppy he had ever seen. He muttered something which sounded as if it had Crassie in it. He made a lunge for Pinicati, got a massive hand on the ruff of her neck, and lifted her off the ground. Lucia screamed at him, and Pinicati wriggled so hard that the man dropped her again. She scooted round between Lucia's legs and quivered there. The man hesitated, then turned back to his wheelbarrow and strode off. What was that about? Dylan said. Why would a man like that want a puppy? Did he say Crassie? He knew her name, didn't he? Lucia nodded, stroking Pinicati fiercely, tears beading in her eyes. So it's this one, Dylan said. I'm going to have to unhook it somewhere and climb in. Dylan wished someone would say very loudly, no, you're not. You're going to stand right there, and in 2 seconds, Floyd and Mac and Joe will appear in front of you with tickets back to Salvador. It was the worst idea he had ever had. He was so scared he could feel his guts dissolving. Man departing to office, Lucia said helpfully. Momentous now. The canvas had been pulled so taut that it seemed impossible to unhook it. But Dylan grabbed hold of the edge, and with Lucia's help, pulled with all his weight. Millimetre by millimetre, that metal eye came down towards the tip of the hook. "Yank it when I say 3, said Dylan. And on 3, they both yanked down, and the eye scraped under the hook and up again. A small flappy hole appeared, just big enough for Dylan to scramble through into the blackness. "I'm in," he whispered, his heart hammering away. He felt dizzy and sick. He wished Matt was with him. Then he was glad he wasn't. Matt could always tell when Dylan was frightened, and right now he was plain terrified. He turned round and nearly scrabbled right out again. He gulped. "Lucia?" "Yes?" Nothing, thank you." "Wait," she said. "Tell me new low register word." If Dylan had had his hands near her neck, he would have strangled her. He both hated her and loved her for having no idea that he was more scared than he had ever been in his whole life. And considering everything else that had happened today, that was saying quite a lot. "Cruddy," he said, his voice wobbling. "Cruddy. It means as horrible as the dried top of a cowpat." Through the small hole in the canvas, Dylan saw Lucia grin. "Super word. I not forget you, Dylan." And she disappeared. Apart from a small amount of light coming from where they had loosened the canvas, it was completely black inside. There was hardly any space to move between packages and bulky objects. Hard angles pushed against Dylan's thigh, and he had already knocked his head against something with metal teeth. He edged and bumped past various odd shapes until he found a bit of space closer to the front of the boat. He sat with his knees up, hugging them. By the time he got out of here, he would be at the field camp with Floyd. He waited, his guts heaving with breaths as loud as thunder. Heavy footsteps made the boat tip to one side before the cabin door was slammed shut. A male voice, which Dylan immediately recognized as Anton's, gave an order. There was a scuffling sound. Then Lucia's furious voice, screaming and yelling in a mixture of languages, came clearly through the canvas. "Frite em inferno! Fry in hell!" she screamed at one point. Then, "Pinicati! Return to me my dog, idiota de merda!" Lucia's yelling went on, interspersed with Anton's calm, creamy voice and another man's shouting. Then there was the sound of a slap, and Lucia's screaming stopped dead. Dylan sat up and banged his head. He had to get off. No, he had to stay on and find Floyd. He squeezed and crawled and scraped and knocked his way back towards the flap where he had climbed in. But before he got there, the engine fired up and the boat's hull vibrated underneath him. He was too late. He would never know what had happened to Lucia. The boat rumbled forward slowly, still gently bumping the dock, then came to a halt. The horn blared, the engine revved, and they were off. Well, I've left you with a few questions. Will he ever see Lucia again? Will Lucia ever find Pinicati? What will happen to Dylan when he reaches the field camp? I'll leave you with those questions for a bit.
Emma, what a terrible place to start. Oh my goodness me, we're all hooked. Right, okay, so we'll pull ourselves back out of the story. Emma's going to continue with some more, I can see one coming up now, some more fantastic facts and information about the Amazon rainforest. I'm going to hand back over to Emma's now. Here we go.
Okay, so now I'd like you to imagine what kind of animals Lucia and Floyd and Dylan might find in the Amazon rainforest. And I'm sure you know like a bit about it, quite a lot about it. You probably know some of these animals, but I'm just going to show you some photographs of some of them. And there's an activity coming up. There's a sort of writing game. So you might want to look at these animals and think about which one you'd choose if you were going to write a story. So you can never really have too many photographs of sloths, can you? So when you're looking at the sloths, I'd like you to notice something about their mouths. Look out for that. And also about their limbs, their arms and legs. So There's another one. You can see his mouth there a bit. You can see some white stuff. And here's another one. And some more. That one's up. He's having a good breakfast there where he is. And the thing is, they do hide, so you need lots of photographs to try and get a good idea of them, because they're not going to sort of pose for you and give you a really good shot. There's another one. You can see his mouth as well. And that one, you can see his mouth. It's such a sweet, it is really sweet, the smile, isn't it? You have to admit. I mean, I don't know how old you are, but really, that is really the sweetest smile. There's another one moving. You can just see that one's eye there. And this one, you might notice on the back of his neck and on his shoulders, he's a little bit green, and that is algae. It actually grows, and that's on the back, on sloths' backs, and that's quite important for my story. And I don't know if you noticed the limbs as we were looking, they're almost exactly the same color as the tree branches that he's climbing on. They are so well camouflaged, these sloths, and that they really need to be well camouflaged, because they're not going to run very fast to get away from anyone. And the other thing I wonder if you noticed is how messy their mouths were. And I don't think sloth mothers ever say to their children, "Eat nicely." I don't think they do. Do you? Because it's just all over their mouths. And they're in what's called a munguba tree. This is what they eat. It's the fruit of you can just see the red baubles there of the munguba tree. And this is what happens if you break open one of the red baubles. And this is the mop-like fruit that they get all over their mouths, because they love this and they just chomp it all up, and they don't care what they look like and how much is all over their face, which is quite endearing, really, isn't it? Mm-hmm. That's the sloths. And there are all sorts of other creatures that Dylan and Floyd and Lucia might see. So they might see toucans, and literally just flying around in the trees, like you or I see pigeons, they'll just see toucans. Or they might see scarlet macaws with these incredibly long, beautiful red tails. They might see an Amazonian woodpecker. And what that woodpecker wants, you can see his beautiful beak is banging away on the trunk of the tree there. He's trying to get all the little termites, tiny little creatures that live under the bark. So he's banging little holes, and then he's going to scoop them up to eat. And they might see some birds whose names they don't know, actually. And I don't know the name of this one, but you could make it up. I just think they're so smart and so beautiful, these birds, with their lovely colours and stripes. I think this one's called an Amazonian chicken. It does look a bit chicken-like with its sort of head, doesn't it? And another thing they might see are botos. Now, botos are pink river dolphins, and they are, where have we got to? They are, yes, the pink river dolphins. The great thing about them is they've got what's called a melon in their heads. It's not actually, the fruit melon, but it is. It's called a melon, and it's capable of something called biosonar. So when they make a noise with their mouths, the melon in their heads catches the echo of it and tells them how far away the tree is or whatever. Because you can imagine if you're a dolphin and you're swimming in the Amazon, and the level of the Amazon keeps going up and down. So sometimes a branch is out of the water, and then sometimes a branch is in the water, and you're swimming around trying to catch your fish. They've got teeth, these botos, and they eat piranhas and all sorts of fish and crabs they can chomp on too. So you don't really want to go bumping into branches which are there this week that weren't there 2 weeks ago. So that's what they use their melon for. Look at them jumping. They are really beautiful, these pink dolphins. They don't start off pink. They're dark when they're babies, and then when they grow up, they grow beautifully pink. So they might see some of them, probably will see some of them. And another thing they might see, which I might not want to see quite so much, is a caiman. And a caiman is a type of alligator, which is a type of crocodile. And they are sometimes very visible like this, so you would be able to run away. And sometimes, as Kirsty was saying earlier, they look a bit like a log in the water. You can't really tell the difference. But the great thing about caiman is that if you wanted to go for a swim and you didn't know if there were any around, you can actually ask them, because they will answer you if you speak Caiman. And that, luckily, in the entire language of Caiman, there's just the one word. And the one word goes like this. It's like, so what happens is the indigenous people who live around on the banks of the Amazon River when they're in their canoes and they want to know if there's any caiman around, they can make this sound like that. And the caiman can't help but answer. And from all around them, just to the left, a bit behind, some to the right, will come all these answering grunts, like that. And they go, oh, okay, we won't go swimming today. That would be a good idea. And there'll be some animals which Dylan, Floyd and Lucia might not see because they're so good at hiding. And the jaguar is one of these. The jaguar only comes out at night. It has the strongest jaw of any cat its size. It can crunch through turtle shells. Can you imagine that? And they also don't want to fight. It's very sensible, these Amazonian animals. They don't want to fight, so they mark their territory. Just like the howler monkeys roar to say, just keep away. We'll all be happier if we don't get into a fight about anything. What the jaguars do is, as they're passing a tree, which is in their sort of patch, they'll use their claws to drag a great claw mark down. So if any other jaguar by mistake sort of comes into that area, they'll go, ooh, let's not bother with this. I'll just do my thing. You can do your thing. And another animal they probably won't see is the manatee, because actually the Amazonian waters are not like this. They're not like, this looks like a swimming pool. They're actually really quite murky. They're quite dark. And these beautiful, sweet creatures are really gentle. They're vegetarian and they eat water lettuce and hyacinth. And they live in family groups. So they're a peaceable lot, these manatees. I must say, I would love to see one. But I think they're quite shy, so you probably wouldn't see that. And then the other one they might see, or they probably wouldn't actually. These are quite, they actually really wouldn't want to see an anaconda. This is an anaconda. And the anaconda is the largest snake in the world and the longest in South America. It's not the longest in the world. The python is the longest in the world, but the anaconda can grow to 5 meters. So if you think of the tallest person you have ever seen in your life, and then you put another one of them on top of them, and then another half on top of them again, that's about 5 meters. And that's the length that an anaconda can grow to. And you can see how thick it is as well. So all of these and many, many more beautiful animals live in the Amazonian rainforest. And they live there in huge numbers. And when I say huge, I mean almost unimaginably huge. So there are 200 different sorts of monkeys. And scientists don't say different sorts of, they say species. So 200 species of monkeys. And howler monkeys is one species. There's Wakari monkeys, that's another species. And altogether in the entire Amazon rainforest, there are 20 million species of animals, if you include the insects, which I do. And they haven't even all been discovered yet. So there's a job for you, whoever's listening out there. You know, when you're older, if you're into botany or biology or zoology or geology, you might go out to the Amazon rainforest and find a few more. You know, we need people to do that. There was one scientist who discovered 50 species of ants in one tree. So it's a really, really richly animaled part of the world. So now we are coming to the activity. And what I would like you to do is to get your pens and pencils if you're ready. And I don't want you to overthink this. Don't, you know, agonize over it, because writing is just play. It's just fun. It's supposed to be fun to do and fun to read. And there is a little bit of work involved somewhere down the line, but not at this stage. So I'd like you to choose one of the animals or birds of the Amazon rainforest. And I'll just scroll back through the ones that you've just looked at, just to refresh your memory. And once you've chosen one, I would like you to think, and just jot that down, write that down on your piece of paper. You can make up the names of these birds if you want, because I don't know what their names are. That's the scarlet macaw, that's the toucan, all the sloths, you've seen all the sloths. And that's the woodpecker again, Amazonian woodpecker. This is the Amazonian chicken. That's the botos. These are botos, so B-O-T-O. Botos are the Pink River dolphins. Caiman, C-A-I-M-A-N. That's the jaguar. The manatee, M-A-N-A-T-E-E, and that's the anaconda. Although actually spelling doesn't matter at this stage. We're just writing a story. We're not going to worry about spelling right now. So when you've chosen your animal, I'd like you to, that lives in this fabulous rainforest, I would like you to decide on something it really wants. I mean, really wants, and why it really wants it. So what might an animal want? It might be food. It might be a friend. It might be its family. It might want to get away from its family. It might want to swim in a lovely river. It might want to get up high or get low or to hide. So think of something your animal wants and just jot that down. You can always change it later. So just anything that comes to your mind, really. And number 3, I want you to jot down something that will stop your animal from getting what it wants. So that could be a physical barrier, like a tree. It could be another animal. It could be another animal of the same species or of a different species. Then the next one, number 4, this is a little bit, takes a bit longer, this one, but how is your animal going to overcome that difficulty? What's it going to do? How clever is it going to be? What tricks or what ideas is it going to come up with to get what it wants, even though somebody's trying to stop it? And then number 5, just decide, is it going to succeed or is it going to fail? You can just, whatever your gut feels like at the time. Don't overthink it. It's, whichever. Okay, so that's half of the activity, and I'm just going to just put that aside. Once you've just jotted those things down, you can just put that aside and not think about it for a little while now. And I'm going to leave you to read my book to find out which animals Lucia and Dylan and Floyd meet in the Amazon rainforest, and whether Dylan gets his farm back, and whether he ever builds his tree house, and whether Lucia gets Pinicati back, and whether Dylan and Floyd do ever make real friends. So that's enough now, I think, about fiction. I would like to tell you a true story now, because you might think that this kind of determination that Dylan and Lucia have only really works in stories. You might not think it happens in the real world, but let me tell you this story. It really does. So 40 years ago, in this beautiful Amazon rainforest with all this teeming wildlife, something was going a bit wrong. The people who live there, the indigenous people, were hunting and shooting and fishing, and that's fine because that's where they live. There are no shops. It's the only way they can survive is by living off the forest. But people from the cities were coming in on speedboats at weekends, and they were shooting animals like Caiman to make handbags or shoes, shooting the jaguar to make more handbags and more shoes, I suppose, shooting the monkeys. I have no idea why they would do that. And there were fewer and fewer animals there. And along came a man called Marcio Ayres. And he was this man here. When he was 19, he was studying science and he was in Germany, and he went to visit a zoo. And in the zoo, he saw a Wakari monkey. And it made him very sad indeed, because the Wakari monkeys, which are extraordinary, they've got bald, bright red heads and lots of fur, sometimes golden, sometimes white. There they are. It said under the picture, under the cage where the enclosure where the Wakari monkeys were, it said they were endangered. And if you're endangered, it means you might die out, you might become extinct. And this made him so sad that he decided to spend his whole life trying to rescue the Wakari monkey from extinction. And like my hero Dylan, he had enormous determination, and he thought he would try everything he could possibly think of to try and make this work. So he went back to the government in Brazil, and he found the right people to speak to, and he said, what we need is a huge conservation area where no one is allowed to come in from the cities and just kill them for more handbags and more shoes, where the people who live there can live in the way they do live, but no one else can come in and kill things. And you know what? He was successful. The government said, Sure. So he went, great. So then what they decided was that they would, oh, there's another lovely Wakari monkey one. Aren't they beautiful? And they decided to give a portion of the Amazon rainforest to protect it, make it a conservation area. And they decided to make it half the size of Wales. So I don't know if any of you've been to Wales, very, very beautiful country. And this is the UK, you can see here. And you can see the green bit is Wales. So half of that, and it feels quite big, Wales, when you're in it, actually. It feels really very big. But they decided to make half the size of Wales a conservation area in the Amazon rainforest. So the Amazon rainforest is 300 times the size of Wales. So if you cut the Amazonian rainforest into 600 parts, then one of those parts would be the size of this conservation area, which Mario Ayres persuaded the government to keep as a protected area. And the government said, that's fine, but the indigenous people, the people who live there, will have to look after it. You know, we can't send policemen in. So Marcio Ayres went to the head of a village, the most important man in a village, which was this woman's father. And he said to him, you know, if we make it the law that no one can come in, will you uphold the law? Will you stop people from coming in? We'll give you police boats and we'll help you develop things like a hotel so that people can come in and look at the wildlife, but they can't kill it anymore. And this woman's father said, yes, I will. And so it all worked, amazingly. That's what sometimes happens in life. Things kind of go well sometimes. And so the law was changed. No one was allowed to buy a house in this area unless they were born there or they married somebody there. They were given they were helped to build a floating hotel. So all these people from the cities could come and stay in this hotel and be taken on boat trips into the forest to see all the beautiful animals. And this hotel is built on floating tree trunks. There's a special sort of tree in the Amazon which just floats, huge trunks. So they've built it all like this. And then what they've done is they've tied huge cables, you can't see them in this picture, from each edge of the floating hotel to the tops of the trees, so that when the Amazon River goes down, the whole thing goes down. And when it goes up, the whole thing floats up, and it never floats away. So that works remarkably well. And so the indigenous people can now actually earn money from the people in cities, and they can buy solar pumps, so they don't have to always go down to the water to get their water. They can just pump it up using electricity, and they can build schools. But I want to tell you, what did they call this floating hotel, do you think? They called it Wakari Lodge, after the monkeys. They built a school. This is their school. It's called Escola Municipal. And they built a library. And here are some children not paying a huge amount of attention in school. Normal. And here are some names of the children in the school. And I think these are rather delightful because there's lots of names that we don't know about. So some of them are quite similar. There's Alexandre and Susanna, but there's Ryandra. That's a lovely name, isn't it? Tatiana, I've heard of that before. I haven't heard of Thais or Bentina. There's Christina, I've heard of that one before, but Jamily. Anyway, so you could use some of the Douglas. I mean, that's a Scottish name. That's amazing that's there. But you could use some of these names for your creature, the animals that you've chosen to write about in your story. You could maybe look at some of those. And there is Marcio Ayres with a Wakari monkey. Very happy man. Unfortunately, he was ill later in his life, and so he's lost his hair in this photograph. But you can see how happy he is holding this Wakari monkey, which he has devoted his whole life to saving, and it worked. So we've talked about fiction stories and factual stories. Now I'd just like to talk about writing a bit, because you're going to have an exercise to do, a challenge to do, and some of you might like to write stories. And even if you don't want to write stories, I think you have to accept that stories are everywhere. I think story is absolutely everywhere. So if you think of a lawyer in a courtroom arguing his case, what he's doing is he's arguing his side of the story. He wants the judge to believe him. And the other lawyer is arguing the other side of the case. He's arguing his side of the story. And if you look at any advert, you will see that they are trying to tell you a story, which is, if you buy this super duper hat, you will be so happy. So that's their story, or this car, or this whatever it is they're trying to sell you. And even you might come home from school one day and say, Mum, guess what happened in the playground? And you're telling her a whole story and you really want her to listen. So you're giving everybody voices and you're explaining why it was so exciting or awful, or why somebody did something so peculiar. So we're all telling each other stories all the time. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself and my writing journey and why I've chosen to write what I've chosen to write. Because with writing, people often say, write what you know. And the funny thing about writing rules is that the opposite is always true as well. You can break them all. They're all really important and you can break them all. So I think it's important to write what you know in terms of your emotions, what you've been through, what you've understood. But I didn't know any of this about the Amazon rainforest 5 years ago. I just researched it. So you can also write what you don't know, which is what you might be doing when you write your story about a sloth or an Amazonian chicken or a pink river dolphin. You won't know what it's like to be one of those, but you know your emotions and you can create a story about them. So when I wanted to be a writer ever since I was 8, and before I was 8, I wanted to be a saint. And which is, I think, is an unusual thing to want to be. And there was a problem with this, well, several, but we'll just focus on one. I had a little brother, and you might think that he looks like the sweetest little brother you could ever have, but he was the sort of little brother who would wait until you had finished all your sweets before he started eating his. And I'm sure you can imagine how that made me feel. You know, saintly. I did not feel very saintly. And I thought, this is going to be too hard because I can't even manage this. So I thought, well, maybe I won't be a saint. What I'll do is I'll try and be a decent person. We all want to try and be a decent person, but I'll think about things that I'm really interested in. And this is me aged about 12, much happier, not trying to be a saint, but I've been for a walk up this hill and seen this incredible waterfall. And I thought, actually, all I want to do is be outside and writing stories. Those are really the main things that I'm interested in doing. So okay, so now I want to ask you about what you know, and I want to tell you about what I knew when I was a child. And we could really talk now about what your childhood, what's normal for you as a child and what was normal for me. So I wonder how many of you have lived in the same house all your life, or maybe moved once through your whole life. Because because of my dad, the job he had, we moved house every 2 years. So by the time I was 11, I had lived in Wales in 2 places, in Scotland, Hampshire, and Malta. So I was always the new girl. I was always going to a school and going, here's the new girl. So I was quite interested in what it's like if you do always live your life in the same place. I thought that would be really interesting, and I quite wanted to know what that felt like. Also, I was also told that I had to keep my clothes clean. And this really didn't make any sense to me, because I thought clothes just, you just wore them so that you were comfortable and warm. And I wanted to climb trees and go outside and do stuff. And I wanted to slide down. What I really wanted to do was slide down a muddy slope. I just thought it would be great. And I remember saying to my mum, can I have a pair of trousers that don't matter? I can really just. Anyway, so imagining Dylan was a way for me to imagine a different sort of childhood. And because he had lived, not only has he lived there all his life, his father and his grandfather have lived on the farm all their life. And because he's a farming boy and he's out and he's climbing trees, he does get a bit muddy from time to time. So I just thought that would be fun to imagine that. And I hope that you can have fun imagining what it's like to be one of the animals in the Amazonian rainforest. So I'd like you to go back now to those 5 things, and I'm going to talk you through them a little bit more slowly and how you turn them into a whole story. So if you remember, number 1 was choosing your animal and its setting. And I'd like you to write a paragraph or 2, or as many as you like, really describing the animal and its setting, everything that's around it. And try to imagine you're describing it to someone who has never seen a picture of it. They've got no idea what color it is, what shape it is, what texture, what does it feel like, what it smells like, what sounds there might be around it. So don't hold back, just every single thing you can think of. So the person listening to your story can be there. They can really imagine themselves there. And number 2 was to write down what your animal badly wants, really, really wants. And this is a fantastic place to use exaggeration. You can go completely wild here. You can be, and you have to think about what sort of story it is. So is it a funny story, or is it scary, or is it just very exciting and fast-paced, or is it rather sad story? But think about something that you have wanted really badly. Dig deep into your imagination. So you might have wanted something which obviously the pink river dolphin isn't going to want. So you're not going to use the same thing, but it's the feeling that you had, the real desperation to get this thing. And before I go on to the next 3, I just want to hold back for a bit and say how you write is important. So we don't really want to write formally. You're not trying to write to impress your teacher or make yourself sound big. What you need to do is imagine a friend beside you, or a younger sibling. And if you haven't got a younger sibling, borrow someone else's, plenty of them. And you're trying to make this friend or the child really gripped by your story. So don't worry about using big words or complicated words. Don't worry about grammar for the time being. It's really important in other documents, but it's not important right now. And just write with them in mind. Just keep them in mind. Pretend they're sitting in front of you when you're writing and you're telling them all about it. Okay, so number 3 was what is stopping the animal getting what it really, really wants. And here we need the same amount of detail. And it's great if you can make it seem impossible to win the thing that it wants, to get the thing that it wants. If the reader or the child listening to you thinks, oh, they're never going to manage that, then that's good, because the child is curious. So why am I being told the story? Because there must be a story. They must be about to get it. Otherwise, there would be no point in telling me this. And then number 4 is your animal battling to get its way. And lots can happen here. This could be 1 paragraph. It could be 4 chapters. This could go on and on and on. Lots can happen, and you can try several different ways of your animal trying to get it. You could try this way and not be successful. Try that way. Try another way. And the difficulties could get worse and worse. It's quite clever if you can do that. Try to keep in the same genre. So if you started off funny, probably best to say funny. If you started off scary, stay scary, because if you've got a funny bit, if people are laughing, they're probably not scared. So if you wanted the whole thing to be scary and you put in a joke, some people can do it. It's quite difficult. As I said, all rules are there to be broken with writing. But at this time round, it might be easier just to stick with the same genre. And then finally, number 5, the ending. What does the animal do when it succeeds or fails? So you've decided whether it's succeeded or it's failed. And what does the animal do? So don't tell us how it feels. Show us what it does when the story is coming to a close, because then the reader has to guess how it feels. And readers like to guess a bit. They don't want to be told absolute. They want to be told all the setting, but they don't want to be, they want to have to sort of work a little bit as well. It's nice to be guessing. Oh, I think this is going to happen. I think he must feel that. I think that's what's going on. And when you've come to the end of that, all I can say to you is, congratulations, you have written a story. Well done. And I would love to be able to read some of them if that's ever possible. So that's coming towards the end of my talk now. If there are any questions, I would love to answer them.
Thank you, Emma. That's been fantastic. So many wonderful animals and things living in the water and reptiles and all sorts. So can I just ask one? So those are photographs that they were taken from when you went to the Amazon, is that right?
I was very lucky. I tried to do all the research at home about the Amazon rainforest, and I read lots of magazines and lots of books, and I looked lots of stuff up on the internet, and I did get an awful lot of information, but I didn't really feel I could write fluently in my own words about the Amazon River. And then because I've been trying for quite a long time and I wasn't quite managing it, we agreed that we would make a trip. So it was fantastic to have the chance to actually go there. And of course, once I'd seen it, then I could write it in my own words, and it became much more natural. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. We did have a comment when the videos had I've had people coming back to me in different places about the video and the sounds and how someone thought it sounded like whispering voices, that they could actually sound. They thought they sounded like people.
Oh.
That's what they could hear. Yeah, someone else was just disturbed by it.
Yeah.
Someone said they've learned an awful lot. Thank you very much today. And I think it's been great, that mixture of talking about, you can hear the phone in the house ringing in the background, just ignore that. It's a big question being rung in, I don't know. I think that's been great, that we've learned so much about your story, about how it's been kind of grounded in non-fiction, about everything around us as well. And that's been what's been quite nice about each of the weeks when we've been having Library Adventures Live. We've had different authors who have come up with this from a different way. So last week we had lots of things like football and footballers who have inspired stories we've written about them. So it's great. This is another way of just thinking about the things all around us, the things we're passionate about and we're interested in, and how they can be turned into stories. And I think it's a great thing to think about, because everything has to be, out of your own head, but it sometimes just doesn't, does it?
No, I think that's absolutely right. It's we pick up all the things that are happening in our lives, or that people tell us about. And we, I suppose, making stories isn't trying to make sense out of them all, but we're looking at the outside world that we're trying to make sense of in order to create our stories. Absolutely.
That's lovely. That's lovely. I can't see more questions that have come through. If anyone has any questions that they think of later, you can still get in touch with us and we can pass them on to Emma. I'm sure she would answer them.
Definitely.
Wonderful. Okay. So we're coming to the end now. So that was fantastic, Emma. Thank you so much. I think we all know now how to keep ourselves a little safer, what to avoid in the Amazon in the future. You need to remember Emma's talk and to read lots of books. And of course, you need to read My Name is River. I think that sounds so good. I love the reading. I'm so excited to see what might happen next. Brilliant, brilliant book. So we've also created a collection of books on Libby for you, which there's a mixture of wildlife books, books about keeping the planet safe. So if you want to go and read some more about the Amazon, if you go onto Libby, and if you've never been onto Libby before, you don't know about our free ebook service, all you need to do is go to that same website here, kirkleyslibraries.co.uk/LAL. We like LAL, that's our shortened Libraries Adventures Live. And you'll get a link there that will take you to our ebook service, and it's all free, okay? And there's some fantastic books there for you to read. So if you're going to take up Emma's challenge and write a story, and we really do hope that you will, yay. Okay. All you need to do is email it in to us when you've written it. So just go away and create it. And what we'll do is we'll pick out those 5 kind of points for you to remember, and we'll put them on this website as well, so that you can just remind yourself if you want to. And we'll put them on there safely. And when you've written your story, you can email it to us here. It's the same email address as it is every week, which is frontline.services@kirkleys.gov.uk. And I will say the ladies that answer these emails, they love when they get one from yourselves. If it's a picture or some writing, they just love them. So please make them smile. Send some stories in for us. But what we're going to do this week is we're going to have a bit of a competition. We all like a bit of a competition, don't we? Wonderful. So in addition, when you send your stories in, we're going to share them with Emma so she can read them as well, because I think she'd love to see what you've written.
Love to see them, yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. But we're also going to offer you a prize. We're going to ask the chief librarian of Kirkleys Libraries, another great adventurer, to choose a winner, the best story that you might send in. And the prize will be a copy of My Name is River. So that's Emma's book we've been hearing about today. So who's up for the task? I know you're all fantastic writers, and you've got lots of wonderful ideas in your heads. So come on, create a story to entertain the chief librarian. I know you can do it. Just keep an eye out for those monkeys. That's what I would say. Okay, so let's hear about next week. So, and there's a nice link between next week's author and this week, which is fantastic. So next week, we'll be meeting author Josh Lacy and his inspiring character, Hope Jones. Hope is an ambitious 10-year-old who is on a mission to get everyone to use less plastic. She wants to save the world. So this is the story of Hope Jones Saves the World, a really important topic, which fits in so well with what Emma's been talking about as well, about how these wonderful environments exist and we all need to do everything we can to protect them. And one of those things is about how we recycle and use plastic or don't use plastic as well. So let's get inspired to save the planet next week. You join us again next Tuesday at 11 o'clock and you can see how you can get involved. If you have any questions for Josh, just use the same email address here and you can send them in advance as well. So frontline.services@kirklees.gov.uk. Questions, stories written for Emma, or any of the previous challenges, you can still take part in all these activities. But remember, this week, Emma's story, there's a prize for the best. Okay, we'll put more details on our website that we had up earlier. Okay, so that's it for this week. Thank you again, Emma. It's been so fantastic. Really great library adventures live. Really well named. I think it's all fitted in beautifully today. Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kirsty. Thank you for having me here. It's been wonderful to be at Kirklees Library. It's been great fun. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. And you're always welcome back. We've learned so much and loved seeing the pictures from your very own Amazonian adventure. So everybody else, until next time, remember, you can rewatch this episode. So if you want to remind yourself of the extra information Emma was giving you about what you might want to include in the story, so you can rewatch this, just go to the Kirklees Library's YouTube channel, and you can also rewatch any of the previous ones that you might have missed. Tell any of your adventurous friends and family about this episode, because I think they will absolutely adore it. I bet there's loads of other children that you know who would really love to see Emma's talk. It was fantastic. I think some of your teachers would also love this talk. So that's it for this week. Go away and be determined. Go and explore, go and create, go and invent, and keep reading. Thank you very much. Take care till next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.